Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and today's podcast is going to be devoted to a slasher movie released in early 1983, and it's one that I'm actually quite a fan of. To me, this is a slasher film that really doesn't get talked about enough. I feel like this is a slasher film that actually deserves a bit more attention, and it's become one of my favorites from the golden age, and that is House on Sorority Row. Now, this film actually did have a very loose remake released in 2009, which I actually think, as slasher movie remakes go, is actually one of the best examples. I think this film actually was very much kind of an ode to the slasher films of yesteryear. And it did actually have the original film's writer, producer, director, Mark Rosman, actually attached to it as an executive producer. Now, House on Sorority Row, as I say, released in early 83, very much during the time when these films were being churned out left, right, and centre. As I've mentioned on countless podcasts before, within this time, there was a huge saturation of slasher films being churned out. You know, some really great ones, some not so much. You know, there was a lot of bargain bin ones released within this time. But House on Sorority Row, I think, is a really well made slasher movie. I think this film is it's shot well. It was actually Mark Rosman's film debut. This was the first film he actually directed. And from what I understand as well, I think the initial budget was 125,000. They actually run out of funds during filming, and they had to actually secure a loan in which to actually finish the movie. I think this film is very polished. I think this film actually boasts some good performances, considering, you know, this is a pretty low budget film at the end of the day. It's just a slasher film, you know, it's not out there to try and win any Oscars or anything like that. But I think what the House on Sorority Row does, it does well. And, you know, clearly films like this and Prom Night, you know, very much kind of playing the revenge tale. You know, obviously in this case with this movie, a prank goes horribly wrong, and then the you know they're being bumped off one by one. They've obviously kept the murder a secret. Someone knows their secret, and they're being killed off one by one. This is obviously a formula we've seen in many slasher movies. Films like I Know What You Did Last Summer certainly owes a lot to such films like this and Prom Night. You know, and yeah, with this movie as well, right from the opening, we actually get, you know, a flashback sequence that I believe was originally supposed to be filmed in black and white, and then it was actually kind of a last minute change. It was actually tinted in black and blue, which kind of sets up the story, if you will. Um, the music, the music, which was actually written by Richard Band and performed by the London Philharmonic Orchestra, an orchestra actually composing a score for a slasher movie. I actually absolutely love the music to the opening of this film, and it really kind of gives you the kind of impression, the illusion that this movie is actually bigger than what it is. That this film has more scale than what it has, with just the beautiful opening score to this movie. There is actually a pretty popular but very short-lived pop band that actually shows up in this film as well. I believe they were called Four Out of Five Doctors. You know, some real kind of cheesy 80s music, you know, in there. And but really, yeah, you know, this movie really wastes no time in really kind of establishing, you know, which girl here is the kind of, you know, the moralistic girl, if you will, the Laurie Strode character. You know, the one girl that actually wants to phone the ambulance when this prank happens, you know, the girl that actually doesn't actually try to get rid of the body in the pool. And as I said, this movie's just really well made. There's a certain polish to it. There's one murder that happens quite... Now, the thing is, the murders are aplenty in this movie. I believe there are actually 9 kills in this film. They do come quite thick and fast. Now, when the prank actually goes wrong, the film really wastes no time in getting to the kills. And quite a unique weapon in this film, in fact, as well, which is actually a walking cane with a bird on it, which the house mother, Mrs. Slater, actually has, implying that it may very well be Mrs. Slater actually committing these crimes and that she's not actually dead. So we kind of get a unique weapon in this movie. And as I say, it's quite a high body count. There certainly is some gore. Now, I do believe for the UK release, it was slightly cut. There were actually some cuts made for this film to try and avoid an X rating. And, there is definitely an emphasis, a bigger emphasis on suspense. As I say, it's very well shot, this movie. I mean, there's a death quite early on in the film where we just see the shadow of the killer holding his victim, up against the wall, and we just see it in shadow form. And then obviously he impales her with the cane. It's a really nice shot, nicely shot scene. And the scene of the ball rolling down the corridor and, the swinging lamp signifying that the killer's been there. It's just really well made. And there's another particular shot that I love that actually results in another kill, in which we actually see the shadow of a figure behind the window and then walk off. And then, of course, the victim actually finds the kind of the Jack in the Box. I'm not sure what they're actually called. The music box with the little jester, which is kind of creepy. Actually, it plays this kind of melodic, kind of creepy score that actually crops up a few times during the film, and quickly to get impaled. Now, I think all of the girls in this film do a great job in the roles. Particularly, her name is actually escaping me. I believe it may be Vicky. She's very much the kind of bitch. She's the bitch character of this movie, and she does a great job in that role. And of course, we get the kind of final girl in this film as well. There is actually a revelation, getting towards the end of the movie, etc. Because the movie certainly does imply that Mrs. Slater may very well still be alive. Her body has gone missing from the pool, presumably. And we find out that obviously she actually had a son. We were led to believe that she actually lost her son, but her son actually survived with, he obviously had some abnormalities. And we do actually, what I like about this film as well, we actually see very little of the killer. Much like Black Christmas, we get little glimpses here and there. We see the eyeball, we see like a quick kind of glimpse of the face, etc. But we actually see very little of the killer. We see the killer's hands, we see the cane, etc. There's that kind of air of mystery to it. Now, we do get a glimpse of the killer near the end that personally I wouldn't have liked to have seen because you can actually tell it's a mask. Just something cosmetic. It does look kind of fake, but it's only like a quick 2-second, 3-second moment. The end of this film, the climax, if you will, I really do like. I really do like this. And that is, of course, up in the attic earlier on the film, we actually get to see there's this clown costume. Now, I'm pretty certain everyone knows that, the moment we see this kind of clown mask and stuff, we know that this costume and mask is going to be used at some point during the course of the film. Otherwise, what's the point of showing it? And obviously, near the end of the film, she's trying to bait the killer using the creepy little music box, which I love. I just love the overall kind of score to this film. Is that the killer is already in the costume. And obviously he moves, and I just love that. I would have ideally liked to have maybe seen a little bit more of the costume, because I think the costume is suitably creepy, and I think for anyone that has a fear of clowns, they'd find it outright terrifying. But yeah, the killer is in the costume at the end of the movie, and I'd love to know how the hell she's got a gun on her and she misses every shot, and she can't be more than about 10 feet away. I'm not sure if she was a stormtrooper in a past life and whatever. But completely misses every shot, and then rips a doll's head off, and there's a kind of a spike in it. I'm not quite sure how that works, but anyway, she fends for herself. She's the final girl. And what I actually do quite like about this ending, admittedly, I felt a bit cheated at first. Is that obviously the killer gets knocked down, and she's actually been dosed up with loads of drugs. She passes out, etc. There's some very kind of surrealistic, dreamlike moments kind of leading up to this, where she's having hallucinations due to the drugs in her system. There's and yeah, the killer. She's knocked out, and then the killer opens his eyes. We all know the killer's not dead. The killer's gonna get back up, and that's where the film ends. The killer's eyes open. End of movie. Now, I'll admit, at first, I kind of felt, do you know what? That's a bit of a kind of a cheap shot kind of ending to finish it there. But I've come to like it more. I think it's an ending that she's obviously passed out, and presumably she's dead. She's going to get killed. Is she going to survive? I highly doubt it. The killer's clearly still alive. So I've actually come to appreciate that ending a lot more now. Its ending is very kind of reminiscent of Black Christmas, where obviously the final girl, played by Olivia Hussey, a fantastic film, by the way, love Black Christmas. She's left in the house on her own asleep, and the killer is still out there. The killer's up there in the attic, and then the telephone starts ringing. It's very kind of symbolic. Now, from what I understand, though, originally there was going to be actually a different ending to this movie. There was actually an alternative ending actually shot, and it would have followed right from where this film ends, and it would have cut to the police taking all of the dead bodies out of the swimming pool, and the body of the clown would be taken out, and it would be revealed to be Catherine in the suit. So the killer, Eric, obviously Mrs. Slater's son, has actually put her in the costume and obviously got away with it. Because obviously the kind of twist, if you will, as such, is that Eric is actually alive. As I said, deformed. He presumably, obviously, witnessed the murder of his mother, and he's taking revenge on these girls. And there is actually one victim, the first victim that's actually killed in the movie, aside from Mrs. Slater, has absolutely nothing to do with the cover-up. I think he's just kind of collateral damage. He's just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. During the production of this film as well, I think that Mark Rosman actually lived in the sorority house where they were actually filming. He went to a sorority himself, and he actually used a lot of his kind of experiences, some of the stories that he had, and kind of incorporated some of them into this film as well. I think this movie was really inspired as well by Italian thrillers and horrors, particularly the films of Mario Bava. And there is definitely one movie, a classic thriller, that this movie is heavily inspired by. And that is, and correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, it's Les Diaboliques, which, released in 1955, is regarded as being one of the best thrillers of all time. It's a classic, and probably the most Hitchcockian film to have never been directed by Hitchcock himself. If you were watching Les Diaboliques, apart from the fact of, it's foreign language, it has Hitchcock written all over it. There are so many Alfred Hitchcock echoes there. Now, interestingly, not to go too much off topic, Alfred Hitchcock actually did want to make Les Diaboliques as a movie. Unfortunately, he wasn't quick enough in securing the rights. He wasn't quick enough. He was pipped at the post, so to speak. But Les Diaboliques could have actually ended up as a Hitchcock film. And The House on Sorority Row clearly pays some homage to that. Also in this film as well, the music box and the cane, which are two very notable aspects from this movie. I believe they're actually in the director, Mark Rosman's, personal collection now as well. And with this movie, I think Mark Rosman as well did a great job, considering it was his directorial debut. He was actually a protege of Brian De Palma. They did actually work on a movie together. And of course, I'm a big De Palma fan, certainly of his earlier works. I love Carrie. I really like Dress to Kill. Even Sisters, which I'll admit I was quite late in seeing. I only saw Sisters for the first time a few months ago, but liked it. And with all of them films I've just mentioned, there's definite Hitchcockian tones in there. And yeah, also it must be said as well that I believe her name is Lois Kelso, that actually plays the sorority mother, Mrs. Slater. Um, I always, upon watching this, I always felt like her voice was a bit off, like it might have been dubbed, and it was actually dubbed. Because apparently her voice was not scary enough. She had the look, she had the perfect look that they wanted, but her voice was just not scary enough. So her voice was actually dubbed, but it's not jarring. It doesn't detract from the film whatsoever. You know, just particular shots in this film. Like I say, I feel like it was directed with a lot of finesse. In fact, just a particular moment. For example, when obviously the girls have decided to keep it all a secret. They're all there at the party that's going on, and the camera just pans to each girl looking guilty as hell and looking nervous, and it just pans across the room through the crowd of people and focuses on each girl for a few seconds. I just love that shot. And again, something really cosmetic, for example, towards the end of the movie again, the doctor that obviously knows the son is alive, trying to keep it a secret, obviously, to, keep his reputation, because obviously he'd been active in illegal operations, given these procedures. That obviously he drugs the final girl, Kate, and I just kind of love the whole kind of lighting that they use in that kind of final scene, and obviously it becomes very kind of hallucinogenic, quite surrealistic. She starts seeing the victims, her friends, and that. So yeah, I think The House on Sorority Row is a really good slasher movie. It doesn't do anything new in the sense of, it's a sorority based slasher movie, which we've had tons of them. But it's one that's directed and handled a lot better than a lot of other slasher movies from around the time. Directed very well, good performances. As I said, the bitch character in this movie plays her role to perfection. The scene, for example, in the waterbed, I love it. And then obviously, Mrs. Slater comes in, rips her waterbed to shreds, and she's like, "You bitch, I'm gonna get you for this," etc. And so I think House on Sorority Row is a solid slasher film that doesn't really get talked about enough, which I think is kind of a shame. I'm not saying it's one of the best horror films ever made or anything like that, but I certainly think it's a slasher movie that deserves some more attention. And the cover art for this film is very misleading. In fact, if you look at the cover art for this film, because I actually bought this film on Blu-ray last year, you'd never guess, aside from the title and that. Well, even with the title, it just looks like it's a softcore porn film. It's basically got a scantily clad woman who's not actually a character from the movie. It just looks like it's kind of a softcore porn ad, not a slasher movie. But yeah, so it's one I'd recommend for anyone that's obviously, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say everyone listening has probably seen The House on Sorority Row. But yeah, good slasher movie, worthy of more attention. And as I said, as sorority slashers go, this is one of the very best, in my opinion. So yeah, and much like My Bloody Valentine, The Burning, and there's quite a few others, good slasher films that stand on their own 2 feet. There was no sequel whatsoever. Just a good standalone slasher flick. So yeah, that's pretty much all I really want to talk about today. So thanks to everyone that listened. I'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. And if you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Talk and Stalk. I absolutely love doing this, and every subscribe means a huge amount to me. It's massively appreciated. So that's it, folks. Thanks again for listening. Take care.